Hello and welcome to today's session, another wonderful episode of Empathy at the Table. Today I'm interviewing Patrick Tinney. Patrick is an author, he's a keynote speaker, he's an entrepreneur, he's a teacher, and he is what he calls a rainmaker. Patrick loves sales, it's in his blood. It's something that he's been doing since he was 9 years old, and he's a real negotiation expert. He understands the nuances of different types of negotiations, specifically with regards to commercial negotiations. So if you're interested and you want to pick up some tips on strategies, on techniques, and how to improve your negotiation process, stay tuned for this episode. And hello, welcome back again, Patrick Tinney. For the listeners, this is our second time of asking. Patrick and I have met before, and unfortunately there was a technical hitch and we weren't able to get a good quality conversation recorded for you. So this is our second time round, and I'm really looking forward to this because I feel I know Patrick a little bit better now. So I'm going to ask him some questions that maybe are a little more taxing than the ones we asked last time. Are you up for that, Patrick?
Let's do it. Come on.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Patrick, I wanted to start by, I'm always curious why people fall into the world of negotiation, because you don't start off and decide that I want to teach negotiation or be a negotiator. So I did some background research into you as a person, and you actually had a real tough upbringing. You had a real tough childhood. You're Irish Canadian. Your dad was an entrepreneur. And you were kind of born into the world, ready to do battle with the world. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey so we get to understand the mindset of someone like you?
I'll try to give you the short version. My dad was an entrepreneur. He used to make bleach in the basement of my grandfather's home next door and sell it to farmers. He could build anything. He built our house from nothing. We had no indoor plumbing. He then went on to build the theater in my hometown of Campbellford, and the guy that he was working with never paid him after 3 years of building. And so I was literally born into bankruptcy. So we had to move to Hamilton, Ontario, which is very industrial. It's like any industrial city in Europe, where steel is the foundation. And he paid everybody back. And then he died. And I never got to say goodbye, and I was only 9, and my mom was 39 with a grade 9 education. So I was literally hustling as a little kid because there was no money at home. Sorry, I'll give you one more thing.
Sure.
I only slept in my own bedroom for 2 years out of the first 18 years of my life. I slept on the couch because we had to rent, or the floor. We had to rent different pieces of the house, of the apartment out, so that we could pay for it and still put food on the table.
Wow. Yeah, I remember listening to you. You used to eat grass.
No. So let me clarify that one and say that the Irish, when they ran into the famine, there was nothing to eat. And so they were forced to eat grass. And so when they emigrated to different parts of the world, they were known as grassers.
Ah, okay. So you didn't actually have to eat grass then as a kid.
Pretty derogatory term.
Okay. So that's the backdrop of where you began to get a notion for entrepreneurship, business, and then you've been working all your life. You went into, I think you plied your trade within the newspaper magazine, within that business. Was it print you were doing? Were you selling advertising? Could you give us some background there?
Yeah, really strange thing. So when my dad passed away, my mother told me that she would only be able to support me until I was 16 and I'd have to go work at a factory. And I just had a bigger vision for myself. And actually, it was quite shocking to hear that. So I started doing anything that was legal to make money, everything from picking worms to shoveling snow. And I can remember at the time in my high school when we would have to go out and do these job placements, everybody was going to the factories. And I said, send me down to the local daily newspaper. There's something about it that's just intriguing me. And long story short, as I walked into the advertising department, there was all these people in there. They're drinking coffee, they're on the phone, and they're making little drawings, and they're just having all kinds of fun, loving it. I thought to myself, this is it. This is me. I belong here. So what I did was I went back to high school and I walked into the guidance office and I said, take me out of every history, geography, non-business class that there is in this school. I want nothing but business. And I was
Hmm.
one of two males in a room full of females.
Hmm. Hmm.
They didn't know what to do. They couldn't say no.
Give us an idea as to what were you actually doing when you first started on a day-to-day basis. I'm trying to build a picture of when negotiation actually became something that you realized this is something really important, can help me make a better life.
Well, I had to go up and shovel snow here in Canada, and so I would do 300 door knocks a day, and my no
Hmm.
ratio was 98%. So, you
Your
know,
no ratio was 98%.
my no ratio because
Right,
people didn't have money. There was no money,
right, right.
right? So I would look to find somebody who was just in that moment saying, "I'm too busy, so here's $1. Go and shovel."
Hmm.
And so that to me was sort of the beginning, if you will, where I really started to understand the transactional part of life,
Okay.
and so much so that after that, I won't bore you with it, but I broke my back running track, and I had to come to terms with it. So I took up piano moving, and at age 16, I was running the whole warehouse for Yamaha Music in Hamilton, hiring and setting appointments and delivering. Like I was working 40 hours a week delivering pianos and organs.
Hmm. So today, Patrick, you call yourself the Rainmaker. Is that what you call yourself, or did somebody coin that term for you along the way?
I think it's just one of those neat terms, and quite frankly, it's more of a political term than it is anything else. But
Okay.
we do hear it in the sales business. The nicknames that I got going through corporate were things like, he's the guru, he's the horse trader, he's the fixer.
Hmm.
Most recently, June Chang called me the sales shifter.
This the sales shifter.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're how do you as a negotiator, how now do you validate what you do? What for you classes a negotiation with Patrick involved, a negotiation where Patrick is not involved? What does that look like?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, One where I'm involved, I go in with a set of objectives, and
Hmm.
they're a little bit different than other people because I know my lifetime deal book is just under $400 million, and I'm not even counting when I went into management and I took over the insert distribution portfolio for the entire country of Canada for Hollinger. 125 newspapers, 5.5 million distribution, $44 million to start, $115 million a year when I finished. So
Hmm.
I'm not even counting that. And so for me, it was everybody was running smooth until they weren't. And when things got a little bit jaggy, they would say, "Where's Tinney? Where's Tinney? Where's Tinney?" Got to get him in the room, right? And when Conrad Black went out and with Hollinger and bought the top biggest seven newspaper groups in Canada, there was a secret vote that went on within the company as to who was going to smash the seven companies together from a distribution standpoint. And I was the only name.
Hmm.
So I had to have the ugliest conversations that God ever created because all of these companies didn't like each other.
Hmm.
And I was going to ask them to uh, join me on a ride where we all had to change simultaneously and move from seven different languages into one insert distribution language that would be universally understood across Canada and the United States.
Hmm. So, what part of that is for you negotiation versus leadership versus sales? When you if you look at those
Yeah,
three,
yeah, it's the business case. So when you meet with people that own companies, they don't trust you, and so
yeah, yeah,
you have to be able to walk in and articulate. In my particular case, it was just 2 pages. I just walked in and said, "All right, here's 500 words," and I'm on the line. Like I can't even see these people. It's not like the Zoom days, right? It's just a
yeah.
telephone call. There's an open mic, and I just said, friends, this is what I've been doing. Here's my background. I'm a gearhead. I'm a distribution guy. I love it. And I will let I can see it. So
Hmm.
if you'll just lean into me And there's going to be
Yeah.
awful conversations, by the way.
Yeah, something you've highlighted there that we talk about a lot in negotiation, especially in emotion intelligent negotiation, which is the likability factor. We kind of negotiate with and we do deals with people that we like, and that's common sense. But how can you give listeners practical tips on how can you actually make people like you, or can you make people like you in a deal?
No, I don't think so. I,
Mm-hmm.
I think what you can do is that you can lay out a business case that is so de-risked that even if they don't particularly care for you, they have to look at the deal. And nothing worse than being in a setting where you're either your small business life or your corporate business life really is dominated by making the right decision at the right moment.
Right.
So most of us say no. The majority of the time, you only really get to say yes once or two or three times. So the yes has got to be correct, and the yes has got to be so firm that, as I say to people, after you look at one of my proposals, take it home and present it to your family. Because if you can't present it to them in simple language, then you have to come back to me before you present it internally.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're going to have a horrible time.
Yeah, but see things like this, Patrick. Maybe you're doing it. You're so unconsciously competent that you don't realize how good you are. But that's part of the likability package, right? For you to be able to have the confidence to say to somebody, "Take the deal home, show it to your family," before you actually go and show this deal to other stakeholders. That's something different. It's something that maybe the other guy or the other girl, woman, is not doing. And I don't know. You said that you don't think it's got much to do with whether they like you or not, but you're a likable guy. I mean, I look at you. You've got this big smile on your face. You're larger than life. You always wear this orange or tie that I see you. It's your kind of signature tune. So whether you believe it or not, or you say it or not, you use the likability factor an awful lot.
So let me couch it this way. I'm very acutely aware of removing negative risk in all negotiations I'm involved in.
Mm-hmm.
So most people don't even think about it. I have a negotiation philosophy. It's remove negative risk, replace it with positive risk, build the relationship, and get smart deals done.
I like that. Repeat that for me. Remove negative risk.
Yeah, remove negative risk, replace it with positive risk, maintain the relationship throughout that difficult conversation, and do smart deals that
Nice.
everybody wins.
What's positive risk? What's for you a definition there?
So positive risk is where I bring elements to the table that allow the other side to feel a lot more comfortable closing the expectation gap on our two sets of objectives, to the point where the trust bridge is so firm by the time I'm finished with it that I'm ready to have conversations. Because let's be honest, in business everything goes wrong, right? I mean,
Mm.
it's a matter of time, and that's why if you're in the technology business, you have NOC centers, right? You have these
Right.
network operation centers, and your high end customers always have they have a lifeline into that, because you just want to take the negative risk away and replace it with an immediate response. And
Mm.
so my idea is to build proposals and incentive plans that allow the other side to sort of say, not only is this a good deal, but I can actually see doing more business with Patrick and his team or Patrick's company going forward, because it's not good enough to offer a solution these days. What you have to do is offer exceptional value.
Yeah. Yeah. Value. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
it's got to be above average.
Mm. Mm. And in order to be able to offer exceptional value, you have to do the work in figuring out what it is that your counterpart actually values. And that's part of building the rapport. It's part of the process in understanding what they value, right?
It is, and so I've become almost un. I become solo self interest in what I do that I don't talk
Hmm.
about pain points with customers anymore. There's a whole cohort out there that wants to talk about pain points. I don't.
Hmm.
I want to talk about futures, because the money is not made in the past. It's only made in the present and the future. We can't go back and make money yesterday.
This brings me on to this is definitely not one of the questions I had here, but you've led me to this point. When it comes to like negotiating salaries, a lot of people negotiate salaries, right? And it's one of the biggest things. And you tend to hear people negotiate based on what they've done, right? So based on what I've done, this is what I think I deserve. What I'm hearing you say, and I agree 100%, is these kind of negotiations should be based upon what I'm seeing in the future and the value I'm creating in the future. Is that, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and actually, you're paying me for all the mistakes I've made.
Right.
Because if a person hasn't made any mistakes, then they don't know what that feeling is like. They don't know what that cold sweat running down the back feels like.
Mm.
And to me, this is very it's a very informed position. So on a negotiation, I can remember Southern, the company that hired me after I left Canada's largest newspaper, the Toronto. But I got a sense of what the package was like. And by the way, it was about 35% more than I was making at the Star. So it was really big. But the thing is, I was going to be representing 17 newspapers, not one. So I can remember 6 months after they hired the person, he looked and found another job as a vice president somewhere else. And I just picked up the phone and said, I'm back. They just said, leave us alone, okay? Because we've now got to go back across the company internally, and then we'll get back to you. Call us about 3 or 4 weeks before this time period when we're finished. Long story short is we ended up in a restaurant, and they pushed the package across the table and said, Pat, here you are. Welcome aboard. And I said, that was yesterday's package. The new package has to be 7% more money. And by the way, I'm just about to move into 4 weeks holidays at the Toronto Star. So I want you to transfer my holiday seniority from the Toronto Star to Southern. And I'm sure we're almost on the identical flight path for how holidays are granted. The guy looks at me, general manager, he says, I can't do that. That's never happened in the company here before. And I said, let's be honest. You run this office. If you can't make good decisions, then you're not going to get the best talent. And I'm it right now. And we both know you should have hired me the last time.
So what tips would you give to somebody who is probably maybe a bit nervous about negotiating a salary, but feels that it's necessary for them to negotiate? What kind of, maybe the top 1-2 things you would say is the takeaway for them?
Well, there's always a wage range within each role, and it's I would think the channel's probably 15%. It's in there somewhere. So typically, unless they're really desperate and they have to fill the seat, they're not going to go the full 15. So I always think that there's probably another 5, 6, 7% in there that's easy. 2% is enough. 2% is a nothing burger. It's a nothing burger. If you don't ask for an extra 2% when you're at the table, you're silly. And you can ask for all kinds of things. Like you could ask for educational perks. You could ask for opportunities to be involved in forward-thinking committees on the company that are going to be game-changing. I was the only salesperson invited to join a panel of managers right through to presidents on global pricing within the newspaper industry. And I have to tell you, it was game-changing. I got to learn what pricing looked like in New Zealand, and what was wrong with what they were doing. I mean, so I'm back to it's the understanding of how business cases are built. And once I learned how to build business cases, I have to tell you, it just changed my point of view so much. And then I added one more element to it, and that was thinking in SWOT. I literally think in SWOT. And the other thing that I did was I developed a really long catalog. So I know about 30 negotiation strategies by name, buyer, seller, risk, and time compression. And 25 of them reside in the back of Unlocking Yes, the Revised Edition.
Actually, I was going to come on to that. You beat me to the punch. Yeah, what I love this, and I've been chewing over this question for the last 3 days with some colleagues of mine. You go up to people and you ask them to rate themselves between 1 and 10 for their negotiation effectiveness. And they come back and say, 6, 7. And you say, oh, that's great, right? 70% of the deals you get. Superb. Great. Feeling good about yourself. So name me one negotiation strategy. And that's where the conversation ends. So I'd really like to ask you, what is the difference between a negotiation strategy, a technique, and an approach? And when you look at strategies, you look at techniques, you look at approach and styles. What's
Yeah.
the difference?
Oh, God, you're elegant today. You got to stop this. So a strategy is something that's clearly defined, and it's something
Okay.
you're able to explain with great clarity in terms of its beginning, middle, and end. So it always has a
Okay.
beginning. It always has that center point in it where it's instructive about where it goes, and then there's the end game. Okay. So an example would be something like share and compare, which I think is one of the worst negotiation strategies out there. It's where you get called into a meeting by one of your customers, and they push somebody else's proposal across the table, and they say, "Have a
Right.
look,
Right.
have a look." Well, you know what that means? That means that when your proposal comes in, it could be used against you. So you can never really offer them the deep, deep value that you want to, because the trust level is so low. So the risk marker for the seller is actually quite high. The risk marker for the buyer is low, and time compression, it really doesn't have an urgency to it unless they say it has. And by the way, you can take two strategies and mix them together,
Okay.
and then they become a super strategy. I think you could probably take three of them and put them together. So let's
Mm-hmm.
go on to the next layer down. The next layer down is a stratagem. Stratagems are used in China, and they're a combination of a tactic and a strategy that turn out to be a stratagem, because they're not a religious based um, culture. Their negotiation style is based on Maoism, Taoism, and Confucianism. And Tony Fang has written a great book about this. He's a professor at the University of Stockholm. I just think it's probably the most difficult negotiation book in the world to read. Tony's been kind enough to exchange a few of his white papers with me. He's just a lovely man. I haven't spoken to him, but we go back and forth. Then you move down into tactics. So tactics are kind of like, it's kind of like, there's no business like show. The lights go on and off. You turn the heat on
Right.
and off. You make the room look small like they do at Walmart. There's nothing on the walls when you go in there.
Right. Right.
Stacking chairs, everything looks very austere. And as far as styles go, so there's an author out there. I won't sort of go into who it is, but this particular person who is recognized as a world leader says there's only three negotiation styles. Wow, if there's only three negotiation styles, and there's only really three of us. I'm sorry,
Right.
that's not true,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think at a minimum there's 6 to 8. DISC leans into 4 different sales and negotiation styles.
Mm-hmm.
If you read any of Marcus Buckingham's work, he thinks that there's up to 20, 30, 32 different styles. I just think
Mm.
there's too much to try and absorb.
Yeah.
But I think you could have combination styles. Uh,
Combinations. Right. Right.
yeah. So if you look at the DISC model, it's usually your primary and your secondary style are really the two pieces that create who you are. Turns out when I went into one of those things, it was a model similar to that. I was a communicating leader, but everybody in the room thought I was an analytic. And the facilitator said, well, you can't do that. You can only have two. They say, well, you can sit
Mm.
there all day long, but this guy's a Belgian.
Right.
He's different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's different.
So for you, then, give me another. So negotiation strategy, share and compare. That's one. You've got over 30. Give me another one. Another.
Yeah, sure. So here's one I just put a video up just yesterday, or no, it might have been today. It's called the drive-by, and I've seen it happen in real time. It's where a customer calls you at the end of the day on a Thursday or Friday, usually at
Yeah.
the end of the month, with a 5 or 6 digit budget, saying, "I've spoken to your competitors. I have this sum of money. I'm going to spend it, and the first person of your cohort that comes back with the best price gets the deal." So it's like somebody running into your front door going, money, 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 money. bye,
Right.
grab the money,
Yeah.
I'm leaving. And and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
watched the guy on the phone with one of Toronto's larger furniture companies. And honest to God, I thought my friend was going to melt.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
so hard because if you're at the end of a month or at the end of a quarter and you're just short of budget, the temptation is so hard. But here's the problem: if you take it on a lower price, it's very hard to raise prices.
Sure.
That's the other watch out.
When you talk of strategies, you talk of techniques and tactics, there's a danger that it might be misinterpreted as being manipulative when you talk about negotiation. It's probably why negotiations maybe has had a bad rap over the years.
I think if you're a game theory person, then you come to the table with that mindset. I don't. I
Mm.
generally sit there and I sort of say, what does a great deal look like? As my friend from Microsoft, Carson Hetty, he says, and he's one of their sales directors, big time money. Um, he just said, well, what does a win look like for everybody? How do we get there?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because here's the thing: um, if we know that there's going to be problems in business, if we know that the company's going to put pressure from the buy side to increase value on the sales side, then the sales side has to be able to come back and say, all right, so if you want to put pressure on me, then I have to go back to my guys and say, I think I can grow the pie with this customer.
Hmm.
If I can't grow the pie, why would I lower my rate? So
I love that
there
question.
you're talking about contribution margin.
Yeah. What does a good deal look like? I think that's a great question. A great question. Tell me about table pressure when in a negotiation. How first explain what it is for the listeners, and then how is it used?
So different people use it different ways. So you asked about the tactical part. So that is very tactical. And so I'll go back to the Walmart model. You only get 30 minutes in a room, and at the 27 minutes, somebody's pounding on the door. Now, if your Walmart buyer is slow rolling you in the poker business,
Right.
that's when you turn your cards over too slow and it just annoys the whole table. But if they engage in personal conversation that lasts longer than it should, so they can compress time for your presentation at the end, so you start going,
Right.
and
Right.
then all of a sudden you can just see the sweat running down people's faces because it could take another 8, 10, 12 weeks to get back into Walmart.
Hmm.
And in the meantime, your ice cream is melting like a triple scooper on a 100-degree day. You got to do something
Hmm.
with that ice cream, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there's also the internal pressure that we all feel, right? So let's say you're coming from out of town and you're going to a major city like Madrid, where you are, and you're from a smaller town, and all of a sudden you're standing in front of this big global buyer, maybe a Zara or whoever is big in the area, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, you're going, I may not get back here again. If I go back to
Hmm.
the office without a deal, what's going to happen to my team? And that's what you start to do.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Smart. Um, I'm a not a big fan of the old school negotiation. I've been around. It's not my first rodeo. I've been around the track a few times, and I remember when I first got into sales. I mean, I used to carry um, uh, this bag full of like pens and stationery and stuff, and we would go to the factory in the morning, pick up this big bag, and then we'd have to literally just walk into shops and walk into places, and we would have to try and sell them stuff. Right? This is old school sales negotiation. Um, I'm not a huge fan of that style today. I think the way we negotiate today, it has changed. Yeah, I spoke with Kel Jensen recently, and one of the things he said is that he'd written a book in 1998, and he read it again recently, and he said, I disagree with most of the things I wrote, which shows how negotiation evolves over the years, and it's a different kettle of fish now. What's your feeling now about this idea of a more of a collaborative type of, well, empathetic approach to negotiation as opposed to the old school, real kind of tooth and nails hard style of negotiator? Right, right. Wow, yeah, 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 right. That's true. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Mm. So, Pat, your book, Nothing Stops Me. This is it recently come out? This is a bestseller. I'm seeing it everywhere. Everywhere I look, I see this. Tell us for people who don't know you that well. Tell us what's the punch in the book. Who is it designed for, and why should listeners go out today and buy it? So the book's an inspiration. It's your story, warts and all, and it's an inspiration to people who want to be inspired by a story of someone who's really had come up the tough way and used literally. It feels like you've built a corridor of human nature, of human goodness through your life, and that's allowed you to be the person you are today. What you're saying, a lot of this is it highlights the need for us to be able to have these tough conversations about tough things with tough people, and that does require the ability to be able to negotiate. Negotiation isn't just about making money, about procuring the best deal. It's about really being able to have those really difficult conversations and being aware of who you're bringing to the conversation as well as who the other person is in the conversation. I've never tasted one, not here in Spain. You don't find beavers here. Oh, bacalao, yes, of course. Por supuesto. Yeah. Pat, I knew it was going to be a pleasure. I had absolutely no doubt. And I actually want to say this is better than the first time. I'm glad we did it again. You've opened up in a way that perhaps maybe the first time we met you didn't. And I think you've given our listeners much more of who you are. And I really want to thank you for that. How can our listeners find you? And is there anything that you're working on that you really need people who are listening out to lend you a helping hand? On that note, I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for joining us again on our podcast. And I've ordered your book. It hasn't arrived yet. I've ordered your book, and I will definitely be featuring that again on a future podcast. Patrick Tinney, thank you for joining us at Empathy at the Table. Once again, thank you, Patrick, for joining us on this episode of Empathy at the Table. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I knew it was going to be a great conversation, and it definitely didn't disappoint. We talked about so many different areas, and I had a bunch of questions, and I probably asked you 3 of the questions I had written down. And because you took the conversation in so many different directions, and they're the best ones. So thank you very much for your time. If you've enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to learn more, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and give us a like. And be sure to search out Patrick Tinney on LinkedIn and find him, follow him, and also get involved with his masterclasses in negotiation. Thank you once again, Patrick Tinney.